So we're very lucky today to have Martin Anayi with us, who's the CEO of Pro14 Rugby. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
I know you're a busy man at the moment, so we will get stuck into the first question. As CEO of, well, one of the biggest rugby leagues in the world, what component parts of a league do you look to leverage to grow the offering? Is it the sport? Is it rugby itself? Is it Leinster, the biggest clubs? Monetizing existing fans, creating new ones? What do you benchmark against? Like the data, what are you looking at to grow?
Yeah, actually, so all of that really. I mean, you kind of really touched upon the key points. When you run a sporting competition and you commercialize it like we do, so we sell TV sponsorship, we sell tickets to final series, we call them, and we have a group of teams. Really what you're trying to do is make sure that the competition is as strong as possible. And so with that multi-layers to it, but making sure your product, putting it in kind of outside of sporting terms, the product is your product right? Can you make it better? Is the format right? Are your teams in it as competitive as they should be? So a whole part of what we do is sporting. And then if you like, the other half of what we do is around monetizing and marketing and commercializing the product, so that we can reinvest that back into the clubs through our beneficiaries. So really my job is all of that, and trying to piece that together and make sure we don't do anything on the sporting side which has a negative impact on the commercial side, and vice versa. And really the key ingredient to all of that is data. On the sporting side, you're trying to get as much great, amazing textual data from a game as possible. That's needed for the coaches and the players, and also informs TV graphics and all that kind of good stuff. So there's a lot of money, if you like, generated around that, and a lot of benefit generated around that. And the second half of the data puzzle is fan data, and making sure you know who your audience is, how many that there are of them, where they are, etc., etc. And that's just a never-ending question. And so that's how we summarize it, really.
And so growth essentially is considered sort of all of those things. You're looking for growth in all those areas of data essentially the whole time.
Yeah. So we brought in a third-party investor in CBC, and so obviously a key part of what we do is to generate increased revenues. But effectively, the majority of the revenues and the profit generated go back to the clubs. Everything we do is to try and boost the sport in our territories, and that might mean sort of reinvesting profit back into them.
Yeah. And then I suppose in terms of like brand, in terms of, thinking about Pro14 as a brand, do you think of it in the sort of traditional sense of a brand with competitors and sort of share of the market, etc.? Are you looking at other leagues like Gallagher Premiership, Super Rugby, or sport versus sport even? Like how do you think of Pro14 in terms of brand?
It's a good question. Just before this call, I was on a brand call, and I was on with our creative agency around revamping our brand. And it's a strange one, because leagues don't tend to normally be brands in their own right as such. And I think the Premier League went quite a long way to sort of changing that thinking. They rebranded with the lion's head, great colour scheme, etc., and colour palette. And removed the title sponsor away and made it about the brand of Premier League football. And that was sort of quite a seminal moment, I think, in European sports, where the leagues had never really been a brand before. In America, they tend to be a bit more of a brand. So that's the approach we're now starting to take, where we are thinking of ourselves more as a brand. And of course, that's right, because it's the perception that really drives commercial return. If your partners don't feel like you stand for the right thing, then they won't partner with you, whether that's a sponsor or a broadcaster. But I think what we've started to arrive on as a league is to say, actually, we're a collective of brands. We're a collective of these teams who have spent hundreds of years, 100 years plus, generating that engagement with their fan base. And what we're going to do is help them do that better.
Yeah, and it's an exciting time, right? I think, in terms of, and just lastly, thinking about then growing the brand, right, and thinking about sort of creativity, because obviously, you know, what Boldspace does is, you know, technology and creativity combined, like a couple of things we've just spoken about. But I know like some campaigns in the past, for example, This Girl Can, you know, for Sport England was a huge success. Do you think sometimes that creativity is a bit lacking in sports in terms of the, you know, what I would call the brand sense traditionally?
Definitely. And I think that's probably because sport has become more professional. I mean, rugby's only been professional for 25 years.
Yeah.
So it was very amateur. And then the first thing to go professional is on the pitch, obviously. The players get paid, the coaches get paid, then in management. And then lastly and latterly has been everything else: marketing, function, commercial function. And so we're getting to it quite late in rugby terms. And I think that's where creativity is what is essential to unlock new generations of fans and new fans, is to use sport and the power of sport to tell a story. We've only just scratched the surface of that. And so we use creative campaigns to sell tickets. We don't really use it very well to generate more people playing the sport and changing perceptions of the tournament, if we're trying to do that. And I think we're just starting to see people come into professional rugby in our terms, but also professional sport. And we're starting to invest in everything that's not the sport as well.
Yeah.
And so creativity is a really, really key ingredient for us unlocking the potential of sport going forward, I think.
Perfect. That's good to hear. Martin, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
No problem. Cheers, Nick.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care.